Welcome to this very special webinar on December 1st, 2025, an interview with local author storyteller Chris Rodell. Chris Rodell is a two-time recipient of the prestigious TINARA Award for Outstanding Satire. And we'll let him explain that in a few moments, what that stands for. Chris has been a freelance writer since 1992. He jokingly calls himself a prostitute, claiming he'll write for anybody who pays and often for those who don't, if the assignment sounds fun. That philosophy has led him to wrestle alligators, race Ferraris, jump out of airplanes, and once gain 20 pounds in a single week by eating like Elvis. In addition to unconventional biographies of Fred Rogers and Arnold Palmer, his books include Use All the Crayons, The Colorful Guide to Simple Human Happiness, and The Last Baby Boomer, the story of the ultimate ghoul pool.
There you go.
2016 satire novel about the life and death of the final baby boomer. And his newest book, Living Suddenly, Sparing with Parkinson's, and Other Things That Suck, chronicles his experience after symptoms appeared at the age of 52. Chris received his diagnosis in 2018. He lives in Latrobe with his wife, Valerie, and their daughters, Josie and Lucy, and a small, loud dog named Snickers. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I have some questions to ask you. I didn't know if you wanted to reveal the TINARA Award details.
Well, I will. I'll be happy to do that. The TINARA Award, I thought I'd written some good novels, and I would see these other novels that had stickers on them from prestigious organizations saying that they won the Hancock Award, the Mullen Award, and I just was bitter about it. And I thought, I'll make up my own award and give it to myself. So I made up the TINARA Award. And the TINARA Award, it sounds like a car or a Southwest meeting place. TINARA stands for This Is Not a Real Award. And I thought I was pretty gracious by giving myself just two winners. I could have been 8, but that wouldn't have been humble enough. So I'm a 2-time winner of the TINARA Award.
Thanks. I love how you can find humor.
Yeah.
In many aspects of life. And speaking of your life, can you please share with us your Parkinson's history?
Yeah, it was about in 2018 I started having trouble. Well, 2015, I started having trouble in the car on a cold day like this. My left arm would kind of like start to shake, and I'd punch it, thinking it was like an opponent. And it was just an odd thing, and it was disturbing and alarming. But then I was giving a speech in front of 250 Pennsylvania librarians in Harrisburg, Hershey. And I do this. One of the stories is about the How to Be More Colorful is the book that Use All the Crayons. And so I was telling them, become ambidextrous. Start trying to brush your teeth with your left hand or your less dominant hand. And I tell the story about Leonardo da Vinci was ambidextrous, but only in a way Leonardo da Vinci could be ambidextrous. He would paint a horse. He'd start with a paintbrush in this hand with the nose and a paintbrush in this hand with the tail. And then he'd paint together and he'd finish the horse like that, which is remarkable. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it makes a great story. And so I'm in front of these librarians, and when I do this, both my hands are going like this. And this time the left hand wasn't moving at all. And up there in front of the librarians, I looked at the left hand and wondered, why is it betraying me like this? So that was my first moment that I realized something is really wrong. So I went and got diagnosed, and they said I had Parkinson's. I say that there's a lot of worse things you can get than Parkinson's, and I'm still eligible for all of them too. In the last year, I had spinal surgery, foot surgery. It's not like they're going to say, well, we can't give Rodell back problems. He's already got Parkinson's. They'll load you up with everything they got.
Thanks, Chris. And your titles are very diverse. You've written books about Fred Rogers and Arnold Palmer, a couple of satiric novels,
yes,
and now a book about Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Tell us about Living Suddenly. Your
Well,
newest
as a
book.
young reporter in Nashville, Tennessee, I would write stories about these hayseed farmers in Middle Tennessee who got killed by their combines in the morning. And they were like 40 or 45 years old. And I was thinking, well, they had a good long life. 45 years is a good long time. And I thought, all these people that were dying suddenly, I thought the only way to live is to live suddenly and to take advantage of every opportunity you have for fun. And that when I had an episode with my Parkinson's, one of the first ones, one of the bad ones, I said I didn't have symptoms for so long, my friends began to think I made it up because they know I crave attention. And now I'm starting to get legitimate symptoms, and some alarming things are happening. I was out on my front porch looking up at the full moon, and I fell over on my back, and I was on my back for like an hour. And what I thought about that time, I'm on my back amid flowers looking up at a full moon. I thought if six of my buddies show up with a pine box, do I climb in? And I thought of all the good things that happened in my life. I wasn't thinking about how dire it was. I thought, I've really had a great time. I've really enjoyed myself and had fun. And I thought I lived a pretty good life. Now at 52, at 62 now, I don't think that the 45 is too old to die, too young to die. It is way too young to die. And 62 is seeming too young to die too. So I'm going to try and take steps to alter that outcome.
Thank you. Chris, much of your humor comes from irreverence and could be considered dark. Are there lines that you won't cross?
I don't think so. This book has had a tortured kind of history. I turned it in, and I'd never heard from the publishers very much, only one email, and I thought I should be getting invited into the Christmas parties and the golf tournaments. And I never heard from them. They just showed no enthusiasm for it at all. And then I finally turned it in. They finally called me back, and they said, "This isn't what we wanted. It's too irreverent." I said, "Well, cancel the contract. I'm going to make it twice as irreverent." I just think that that's the way to go. In there, I talk about the death of my parents, and I've read that they say that losing a parent can be one of the hardest things in life, but so can knowing exactly where they are and being responsible for them. A lot of difficulties that come with aging parents, and I'm becoming one of those difficulties now for my children. But my own parents, I think that's a line that some people think you crossed something here, and I didn't mind it because my father my parents were both great people. I loved them so much. And my father was a Thanksgiving probably about 20 years ago. He said, "Don't come. It's too dangerous out." It wasn't dangerous. He said, "I don't want it on my mind if you guys get hurt on the way here." So we missed Thanksgiving, and that all blew up. He called me back later that night, and he said, "Oh, I had a terrible day." He goes, "I thought I was going to die." I said, "What happened?" He goes, "I had to go into Pittsburgh, in the South Hills." He said, "I had to go into Pittsburgh for something so essential that I couldn't go another day without it." And he goes, "I almost slipped on the ice. I almost got hit by a trolley." I said, "Why did you have to go into Pittsburgh? What was so important that you needed to get?" He said, "I needed batteries for my nose hair trimmers." And I'm thinking, that a boy, Dad. We'll find you in heaven, the one with the exquisitely groomed nose hairs. Now, my mom, this was a line that I wondered if I should cross. And when I wonder that if I should cross them, I generally do. But she was going through dementia, but she was still cheerful and wonderful. And we went to our church out here in Latrobe, and it was time for communion on Easter Sunday. And so we get up there, and she takes some of the body of Christ and starts choking on it. And she's right here at the altar on Easter Sunday. And I'm thinking, if she starts turning blue here, what do I do? Because if she dies, it's going to be one of the greatest Christian deaths in all time. It's Easter Sunday. She's choking on the body of Christ at the altar in the church. I thought if she goes to heaven, Jesus will be begging her for forgiveness. And then I was really conflicted because I thought she was generally starting to choke and very audibly. I thought, now what do I do if somebody comes up here and tries to Heimlich her? I said, "Don't anybody touch her." So, but she survived that and lived another year or so, which was many delightful times. She fell and broke her wrist on in her kitchen at the senior center where she was living. And they started taking her out, and all the ladies are out there. And "Rachel, where are you going?" She's 86. She said, "I'm going to the hospital. I'm having another baby."
Oh.
So I think that there's a good place for irreverence, and I think it comes from because I'm just so bewildered by life. I don't know why there's so much injustice, so much hatred, and so much sadness in this world. We should be able to have more fun, shouldn't we?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Admire your outlook.
it's earned.
Mhm. And you mentioned Latrobe. Can you
Yeah,
please, and you write a lot about your office in Latrobe. Can you please tell us about it?
yeah. It's in the Tin Lizzie, which is Youngstown isn't in Latrobe. It's a one stoplight town. I say we have one stoplight, 6 liquor licenses, and the Latrobe Country Club isn't in Latrobe. The Latrobe High School isn't in Latrobe. They're both in Youngstown. Latrobe, the Tin Lizzie goes back 200 years. It goes back to the 1750s, so around there. And it has 3 bars on 3 different floors, and my office is on top of it all. And it's just a cool place. Like people say, I'm just like Ernest Hemingway. They think that, and I said, yeah. If you take away all his bestsellers, all his money, all his accolades, and all his six-toed cats, he wouldn't be able to tell us apart. One of my favorite things to do there is the owner, if he's interviewing somebody for a job, a waitress or something like that, I can come down and pretend I'm him because I dress generally like a prosperous businessman. He dresses like a bum. And the reverse is true. I'm the bum and he's the prosperous businessman. But I'll come down and I'll say, he's interviewing a waitress. I'll say, are you pretending you're me again? Get your ass back to work. I'm Bob. I can do for you. But it's really great. And I'm fortunate that I have some people that come and want to meet me. And like I said, I haven't worked a real job since 1992. And they come up very, very tenderly on these creaky steps and they say, we don't want to disturb you, like I've been doing brain surgery in there. They said, we're sorry to disturb you. I said, I've been disturbed since 1982. Come on in. There, it's like people say, what do you do for a living? And I used to say I was a writer or a prostitute. Now I broke down what I do throughout the day, and I stare out a window. And I say, I stare out a window for like 90 seconds. Then I type for like 90 minutes. Then I type for like 3 minutes. Then I resume staring out the window. And what happens if you have a brain like I don't have a better brain than anybody else, but I've been employing this brain and working it and exercising it since 1992. And I just sit there and I think it just floats away on me. Like I said, I was on a cannibal run the other day. And I said, a cannibal is someone who feasts on human flesh. One that feasts on dainty little portions is a cannibler. Hugh Jackman.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
One of my all-time favorites is if fans of the Grateful Dead are called deadheads, what does that make those of us who revere the book Moby Dick? You see, you can have fun with these all day. I've written 2 books about them let's use all the crayons, but it don't pay nothing. So
You have a marvelous mind to remember all of these.
yeah,
How do you think that affects your Parkinson's?
I wonder about that because that you can take away my mobility and put me in a chair all day, but if you take away my mind, that's killing me. So I don't know what's going to happen next, but we all have to face those situations. Like I say in the book, that there have been 117, anthropologists say there have been 117 billion people on the planet since it cooled enough to be habitable. And of those, no one has made it out alive. The only thing we have in common is we're all die at the end. I said they even took Tom Petty. When you took Tom Petty away, that meant they really meant business. What do I stand if they took Tom Petty away? And so I say there's 117 billion people who have come and gone. I don't take it personally.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And at a time, Chris, when journalism majors were competing for prestigious internships, I heard that you spent a summer traveling the Midwest, county, and state fair circuit.
Yeah.
What did you learn?
Into that.
What did you learn from being a carny?
I learned how to juggle. Because if you're standing there all day in the hot sun, we had a baseball game, see how fast you throw the third pitch. And You'd pay $1 and you'd get 3 guesses. You'd get to throw 3 balls, and on the third one, you have to guess the speed. If you guess correctly, you win like a 25-cent hat. So that was what I learned. But the fun I had was just meeting people from all over, and it just led to so many great opportunities and fun. And I really think that was living suddenly. I could have tried to get a prestigious internship, but I thought it would be better to do something fun like this. And it was a great time. Made some great stories.
It sounds like it was a great experience. And then
Yeah.
thinking of work experiences, I recall that your first job was in Tennessee at the Nashville Banner.
Yeah.
What do you remember about living in Nashville?
Nashville is a great town. And I loved it because any bar stool you go into, any bar, and you sit next to somebody, they're convinced they've just written the greatest song ever. And sometimes they have. There was a guy there that had written the Gambler for Kenny Rogers, and it became a huge hit. And he just knew he had something great written there. And I loved being among those dreamers. You know, that some of them had failed forever and had turned to alcoholism and other things like that, but they were still convinced one day they were going to get the #1 hit. And I loved being around dreamers and writing in those situations with those people. If I'd say something like a clever line, they'd say, "That's a great line." They'd look at each other like, "That's a great line." So it really sharpened my eye and my ear for writing what I write, you know, stories. I don't write stories with music, but I just learned how to be a wordsmith, I guess. And Nashville was just fun. We had so many great times down there.
How many years did you live there?
3.
3? Okay.
Then I wanted to move back to Pittsburgh because I couldn't find a good place that made a really good pizza down in Nashville.
Okay. Is that what brought you back to Western
Yeah.
PA?
Yeah.
Okay.
In Western Pennsylvania, how do you beat it? You know, it's great.
It was for the pizza.
Yeah.
And maybe a few other things.
Yeah, there was a few other things involved.
And then before long, you were working for America's most notorious newspaper, the National Enquirer.
Yeah. Ta-da! Yeah, they were great. A friend of mine in Nashville was doing stuff for them. And when I was between jobs, he said, "Call this guy up. He'll get you some work in the National Enquirer." And so they called me up and said, what was it? Oh, they wanted me to do a story on America's cheapest hamburger in Peachins. Anybody are familiar with Fayette County? Peachins restaurant and grocery store sold 15-cent hamburgers and 25-cent cheeseburgers. So I went down there and did this story. It took me a morning. They paid me $750, which was really good money for a newspaper reporter then. And then I saw a kid had driven a car over a cliff in Beaver Falls and had not been injured. If he'd been injured, we'd know what the story. But he survived this car, driving a car over a cliff. He was like about 5 years old. And he was standing up on the driver's side, but steering the car. And it went over a cliff and he survived. So I wrote "Toddler Survives Crash." And they said, "Do that one." So I got another $750. So you could see the way my mind was trending. I was getting paid for the more fun stories. So instead of covering like the Yacht School Board, I'd do stories about town saved by giant ball of twine or something like that. That was the Darwin, Minnesota. This old farmer, eccentric guy, had collected all these balls of twine balls and made one huge ball of twine. He got into the Guinness Book of World Records, and they said they built a pagoda over the twine ball and charged $5 per person. And they made enough money from that to build the Twine Ball Inn and the Twine Ball Restaurant. Then I had one about, the lead for that one, the lead of the story was, you wouldn't want to be in Darwin, Minnesota the day Earth gets invaded by giant cats. They were just so fun to work with. You know, I had I saw this story on one of the premium channels. They were talking to Elvis Presley's cooks, and they said, "Oh, I used to bring him these pork chop sandwiches, and he'd have butter dripping down his arms, and he'd say, 'Bring me 6 more of these.'" I thought, what would happen to an average guy if he ate like Elvis for a week? So I called the Enquirer. They said, "Get on it. We'll give you $1,000." So I called the author of a Elvis Presley cookbook. I want you to all sing it with me. "Are you hungry tonight?" And so I talked to her and got the heaviest recipes. And I ate like Elvis for a week. I didn't stop eating. I fasted down to 173, which was a loss of 10 pounds to start, so it would be more dramatic. And I got up to 193 by the end of the week. So
Wow.
the headline is Inquirer reporter gains 20 pounds on the Elvis diet. So then
Wow.
they called me up one time and the movie Braveheart was out. And they said, let's see what would happen to an average guy in a small town if he wore a kilt for a day. So they got me a kilt, and I spent a day walking around Latrobe construction sites and getting whistled at and all that. That was a good time too. And then they called me back later, and I said, like a couple weeks later, they said, we've got another way out story for you. They call them way outs. And I said, do I have to wear a dress this time? They said, no, 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 no. It'll be a challenge to your masculinity. We want you to lay on a bed of nails, put 50 pounds of concrete on your chest, and smash it with a sledgehammer to prove the mind has the power over pain. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And I found a guy out in Ohio that has all these feats of strength for Guinness Book of World Records. And he put me on a bed of nails, put 50 pounds of concrete on my chest, and they smashed it with a sledgehammer. Now, that was the only story I ever did for the Inquirer that was utterly untrue, because it said, Inquirer reporter lays on bed of nails and feels no pain. I felt tremendous pain. And I said, why did you guys put that? And they said, well, you're an innocent, you're a non-essential worker. No one cares if you get hurt.
Wow.
Wow. Sounds like quite a journey.
Yeah. I say I'm the because of my work with the Inquirer, I should be in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the most friends who are in the Guinness Book of World Records. Because we had another guy here, and two of my very favorite people. One guy who's Ange Camerado. He ran a bar in West Side in Pittsburgh, Camerados. And he started pouring his first beer at midnight on April 15th, 1932. No, it was 32. So he was at it for a long time. And he never left the bar. He was the longest serving bartender. I taught classes at Point Park University, and I'd bring him in for my final exam. I'd say, this is Ange Camerado. You have a half hour to ask him questions and write a story about him. And they'd ask him all these questions like, what do you do? And he'd say he's a bartender. Where do you live? And everything he said made him sound more and more ordinary. And finally one kid said, what makes you so special? He said, I'm in the Guinness Book of World Records for longest serving bartender. And then he told us all these stories, and it just was magical. And he became one of my favorite people. Now, another guy who is in the Guinness Book of World Records for least traveled, for most traveled, was John Klaus out of Indiana. And he was the Guinness Book of World Record holder for most traveled man. And he survived the Battle of the Bulge in World War II and said, if I ever get out of this alive, I'm going to live an entirely original life. And he just started traveling everywhere. He was married and divorced 6 times. And I would call him up every time I'd get some unusual assignment. Somebody said, we're doing a story on, this was one of the men's magazines, what it's like to eat testicles. They're talking about mountain oysters, like fried bull balls. And so they wanted to find out like that. And I said, John, I'm doing a story about how to eat, about what kind of testicles are the best. He said, he said, I've had them all. What kind do you want to talk about? I said, something unusual. He said, well, I had elephant balls once. It was in a soup in Berlin, elephant soup Burundi. And no, they didn't come in a really, really big bowl. I'd love to get those two guys together. One guy that never traveled anywhere and the guy that traveled everywhere. They would have loved each other.
Wow.
What dynamic people. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I enjoyed hearing their stories. I somewhere developed a good listener status because I know what is going on in my head, and I want to hear what's going on in everybody else's head. So I try not to talk too much, even though I do have many interesting stories. I try not to dominate the conversation. I want to know what's going on in you and what you're thinking about, because I think the typical person is endlessly fascinating.
Thanks. Yeah. Back to Parkinson's for a moment. You had said that it begun to assert itself. Give us an example.
Well, I talked about the one falling in the flower patch, And like I didn't even have much trouble walking till recently. Now I have that shuffle, but that's part of it is because I had the foot surgery. I'm thinking that. So I had foot surgery, then back surgery. So I'm a mess anyway, going out at it. But the other night I had a really bad episode that I can't make light of. I wrote a joking story about it that had jokes in it. But the more I think about it, the more dangerous it was. My wife is in Florida tending to her father who's in hospice care. My two daughters are in Pittsburgh and Kent, Ohio. So I'm at home all alone with the dog with the bladder problem. So I trip over the dog coming in. I was stone cold sober. I wasn't drunk at all. Hadn't had a beer in 3 or 4 days. I trip over the dog and I start to fall and I steady myself on a chair. But then the chair starts slowly sliding away. My hand starts slowly sliding away too. And I realize I'm going down. And I've had this happen before. When I'm down on my knees, I try and get on my back, on my rear end to push myself up. And I was unable to do it. And later they asked me, they said, how far did you fall? I said, I fell 25 feet. I said, there was 3 feet the first time. And then it was about a foot twice every hour for the next 8 hours. Because I tried to do a push up and I couldn't do it. It felt like gravity had concentrated itself all on me. And it was just hour after hour sitting here. I ended up laying here 9 hours in my living room. And I had the cell phone with me, but I was distraught. So at one point I tried to think, I had it in my hand and it was probably around 10:30 or so. And I looked at it and I said, it's dead. It wasn't dead. I didn't realize it till later, much later. But I laid there and I couldn't get over on my back. We have hardwood floors, so every time I got on my knees, they would hurt. And the pain in my arms, the lactic acid, I couldn't move my arms anymore. So I just kept falling one foot and saying, I'll get out of this. We were talking earlier, I remember doing a kip in high school in 8th grade or so. It's when you lay on your back, you put your feet over your head, and then just magically throw yourself up, and you're standing up like a trophy head. And I thought, why can't I do that? I can't even roll over on my back right now. And it's humiliating. And I didn't want to call anybody because I thought they're going to make fun of me. You know, I think a guy has a detector in him that says, you've got to make it at least look like you tried. And I tried like crazy and I couldn't get anything done. So around 6 a.m, this was between bouts of wakefulness and sleep. And I said, it just is a terrible situation and I can't get out of this. And I didn't know when anybody would happen. If I didn't have the phone, my wife tries to call me, I can't respond. The kids try and call me, so somebody's going to come out here and get it. So I thought I'll honk the horn. I had the fob with my wife's car, and I started honking the horn arrhythmically to show there was something different. I thought maybe one of my neighbors will be heroic and come and save me. They didn't have time for that. But they must have thought Spider-Man was on duty at the time. But so finally, I get the phone out and I say, it's working. What an idiot I am. Or maybe a charge well was against my butt the whole night. But I said, I'm going to dial 911, because I really need them. And I thought, I've surrendered. I'm going to give in to it now. And I dialed 916, 998, 9153 6421. My hand was shaking so bad I couldn't dial the 3 numbers. And I really thought, man, I'm in trouble here now. Because it was dire. There were biological imperatives at work. The dog with the bladder problems is lurking. And I called 911 and they said, what's the problem? I said, I've fallen and I can't get up. Now, that used to be a commercial that we always used to mock, me and my boys. We used to mock about the old lady who'd fallen and could not get up. Now I had become her. And the door was open, so the guys came and they couldn't have been better. And they got me up in the chair and they were just really nice guys and put me at ease. And they said, how long did you wait before you called? And I said, 9 hours. I said, how long do most people wait? They said, 15 minutes. So I went to the hospital that day and they wanted to keep me overnight because of my problems. And I said, I can't, I have to go home to the dog. And to be honest, I don't even like that dog that much, but we're stuck together. And so I had a friend come pick me up and took me home and got me all right and in good shape. But that's a serious problem. Now, I was in the house. Had I been outside and fallen outside one of the grades on the driveway or tripped over a root, who knows how long I'd have been there. And so it's like people say, you look great. And my standard answer to that is I said, you should have seen me in the 8th grade, man. I looked really good back then. But I'm thinking if I fall here now outside, I'm a goner. I'm going to have some real problems. Like people ask, how are you doing now? And I said, I'm one careless step away from catastrophe. And that could be it. Even in the house here, if there's a box sitting somewhere, if I trip over that, I'm done. I don't have any broken bones or anything to show from any of my falls. It probably seems like it's just a matter of time. And the drugs I'm taking pramipexole, carbidopa, levodopa, amantadine, and I'm supposed to get another one today that's supposed to cure the freezing periods and the falls and the balance issues. So I'm hoping that'll work, but who's to say?
Have you thought about any steps you could take to, if you fall again, to have a better solution?
Well, the medic alert bracelet is tops of the list. And so I'm going to do that. But like you said, somebody said that there's one that when you fall over, it activates. That seems what I need. Because I don't know what I'd have done differently if I'd had the phone. I would have called somebody sooner. But I didn't want to make that call. I thought the phone was out, and I thought I can do this. I can get up out of the chair. I can just pull myself into this chair and get my thinking organized. And I couldn't do it. I was on the floor. And when the paramedics came, I was laying on my belly with my hand over here like this, and this hand out like Superman. And I said, fellas, you're going to have to help me up. And they did. But later on, I started thinking, man, that was really precarious. That could have been a bigger problem in many different ways. So maybe it was a wake-up call.
Well, we hope you take those steps. Plus, we need you around to keep us entertained.
Well, I appreciate it. I want to get more involved in the community, so I'm looking forward to doing more stuff with you guys.
Glad you're okay, but sorry you had to go through such a long process and a painful.
Well, I wrote a story about it, and people liked the story and were very generous with their offers of help. So maybe that'll be the good that comes out of it.
Sounds good. And I think living in the moment, seems to tie well into this story.
Yeah.
And would you like to share, as we conclude your questions, would you like to share a sample of some of the writing?
I don't know how boring it is watching a man talk on the phone computer, but we'll find out how boring it is watching a man reading while talking.
We'd love to hear a little from your newest book. And also, if you'd like to learn more about Chris's books, I did put the website in the chat.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is, I talk about how I lied on my driver's license because I'm 5'7" and I'm not satisfied being 5'7". So they asked, how tall are you? I said, 6'2". And they put it down. They didn't care. So I'm 6'2" on my driver's license. And I write about that. Who am I? I'd say exactly who I think I am. I am the Grand Tetons. I am the righteous waves at Cape Soledad. I am the long, slow birdie putt that rolled in to win the match when you thought you were done. I am the memory of the sweet first kiss you haven't thought about in a dozen years. I am every movie Leslie Nielsen made after 1972 and every song Tom Petty ever wrote. I am Cool Hand Luke. I am the open parking space right by the door next on the rainy day when you have the boxes of stuff straining your back. And I am the guy who holds the door for you and cheerfully insists on carrying one of the boxes up. I'm the phone call that lets you know you are the recipient of the TINARA Award. I am every spontaneous act of kindness you ever motivated to fulfill for your every good intention and gave hope to the hopeless. I am all the books you enjoyed, even the trashy ones. I am the hand that reached out to you when you felt you were all alone, and the one that gave you the pat on the back when you were certain crestfallen that no one had noticed. I am the magnificent soul that endures the mortal lifetime of unfortunate incarceration in the surly confines of our humble human husks. I transcend climate change, partisan bickering, and the peculiar obscurities of the market that create painful ulcers in the gastrointestinal tracts of the caravan guys. Your earthly illnesses trouble me not. I am immune to your cancers, dementias, and degenerative neurological disorders that consumed much of our mortal portions. Think you can hurt me? You don't even know who I am. Need a hint? I am immortal. I am the guy who will live forever. Guess what? You will too. We have at least that much in common. I'll leave the light on for you. You and I are going to have some catching up to do. That's kind of like from the one of my favorite books, The Grapes of Wrath. And that always chokes me up because the part where John Steinbeck says that. And I just I started writing like that. I kind of had an ending like that on my Fred Rogers book too. And it moves me. But I spend all that time up there in that office all by myself. I move very easily.
Sounds like you get into the flow, and I can't wait to read the rest of your book.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. And
I always tell people, if you get to any slow parts, skip every other word.
Oh, I like that. Can you, and you mentioned about Fred Rogers' book. Can you share just a little bit about the rest of your books, please?
Here's Use All the Crayons. That's the one that has like the questions, all the things I've thought of. Ways to be more colorful. Like tell friends you're going to open an art gallery. Invite them to a room with nothing on the walls. Have them be greeted by 30 guys who say nothing but, "Hi, I'm Art."
I noticed that was the deluxe edition too that you showed us.
Yeah. First edition had 500. This edition has 1,000. I started out, I turned in with 250, and my wife said, she goes, "Well, it's good, but it's earnest, and you need 500." And I wrote down 251. Remember, a long marriage is a terrific antidote to excessive ego. I thought that book was going to do great. It still does great, and people really love it. But I thought it would put me on another level. Nothing has put me on another level. I'm still at the ground floor of everything I've tried to do. This is the last baby boomer. The last baby boomer will be 112 years old in the year 2076. And people are going to be so excited about the last baby boomer, they're going to put him in a museum, charge $25 to be with him for 15 minutes. If you're in the room when he dies, you win the jackpot. I got to know Arnold Palmer pretty well, and I interviewed him about 100 times over 20 years, and we became friends. I'll tell one story here. I'll tell it kind of quick, but people asked if I ever golfed with Arnold Palmer. I never did, but he's seen me golf. He'd come down on the second hole and watch the day's worth of golfers drive by and play and just banter with him. He loved doing that. And I'm not a very good golfer, but I can hold it together sometimes. And on the second hole, it's a little par three. And I say when you're golfing, you only have you have a couple swing thoughts, like keep your head down, keep your left arm straight. When Arnold Palmer was watching you golf, I had one swing thought was, don't crap your pants. So I'm sitting there and I get the club back to here, thinking my swing thought, and a car horn starts honking in my backswing. And I held it together and I hit this really great shot. And Arnold Palmer goes, "Oh, that's going to be good." And I'm thinking, as the ball's in midair, I'm thinking, if this goes in with Arnold Palmer watching, it's going to be the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Now, I've told you, I've had 2 daughters that I really love. And if years from now, people would have said, "What's the greatest thing that ever happened to you?" I'd say, "Oh, I have these 2 daughters that I love, but Arnold Palmer saw me get a hole in one time." Now the ball lipped out. And he goes, "Oh, that was a great shot. And you holding your concentration together with that jackass blowing the car horn." So I ran home to tell my wife, I said, "You're not going to believe it. Arnold Palmer almost saw me get an ace today." She said, "Hey, we saw you while you were golfing." Josie said, "There's Daddy, honk the horn." Fred Rogers. Anybody have any Fred Rogers stories? I have an interesting one that he and Arnold Palmer didn't get along very well. And it seems odd and it seems to defy logic and reason. But I was in Mr. Palmer's office 2 weeks after he'd won the Presidential Medal of Freedom, very prestigious award. And I said, congratulations. How about Latrobe having 2 winners in the last 2 years? He said, who won before I did? I said, Fred Rogers. He goes, he did? Damn it. Now, that's pretty flimsy ground to stake a whole discussion about whether he liked him or not. But I looked through Google and I couldn't find a single picture of these 2 men from Latrobe that were 1 year apart in school all those years together. They weren't at any ribbon cuttings. They weren't at any parades together. There was no evidence that they had spent any time together. Now that's flimsy too. Maybe something happened. But if you think about it, Fred Rogers did 957 episodes about neighbors. He had on policemen, he had on cobblers, he had on mayors, he even had on a talking gorilla. I want to think that they said, well, we have a spot this week. Let's ask Arnold. Unless the talking gorilla says no, then we'll have the talking gorilla on. But after all those shows, why he didn't have a real actual neighbor from his own neighborhood, one who happened to be one of the most popular men on the planet. And I've talked to people later and they said it's true, they didn't get along, which is just bizarre. I don't know whose side it was on, that maybe it was Fred's side, but I can't imagine that. And I could imagine Mr. Palmer being so competitive that he resented Fred Rogers taking the spotlight from him, but it's hard to believe.
2 remarkable people from the same neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's really lucky. In fact, for a while when I lived down our other street, I could go out my front door and be on Fred Rogers Drive, Fred Rogers Way. And if I make a left, I'd be on Arnold Palmer Drive, because they both have connections to Youngstown here. This is Evan and Elle, the story of the long distance social media afterlife love story. Can you see that at all?
We can see it. The font's a little hard to read.
Yeah.
But it's on the website.
Yeah. But I started thinking about Evan and Elle, the combination of the names, and I thought, let's take the Romeo and Juliet story. Instead of Italy, let's put Juliet in heaven and Romeo in hell. And for them to get together, she has to lower heaven and he has to raise hell. So I'm very proud of that book. It's got some really great stuff in it. And people who read it love it. But there's just not that many people that read it. I've had a failing in marketing through my whole career. But I've had a good time. I used to think I'd be successful by 40 and I'd have 20 good years of doing all kinds of things that I wanted to do. And when you're young, you think you're going to turn the world on its ear. Now I think I'm 62. If I had 2 weeks of that kind of level of success, it wouldn't be much, but it would be fun. You'd want to be with me for those 2 weeks.
Can't wait to hear about that.
Yeah.
And what's next, Chris?
I'm trying to put together a proposal for a book, for a website that compiles all my stuff again, that takes some of the best of use all the crayons and the Hungry Cannibals and things like that. And I'm going to call it the thoughts from the brain of a man with the brain of the man with the brain of a free range chicken. Because I said I think like a free range chicken, and I don't know what that means, but neither does the free range chicken. But that's how I come up with all those things. Like people say, you think funny, and I say, what you mean is I think. I look at things from every angle and just try and find the absurdity in it. And thoughts from the brain of a man with a free range. I'm screwing it up now, but that's what it goes like. So I'm trying to do that, and I'm trying to get more speaking engagements, because those seem to go well, and just trying to scratch out a living.
Looking forward to what's next. And Chris, thank you so much for your time. And there's been a few questions that have come through the chat. I'd like to read those to you, and then if you have a few more minutes after that, we can open it up for additional questions.
Sure, I have all the time in the world.
Okay. Let's see. Have you ever done stand-up comedy? Lauren thinks she would be a natural. I would
thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that. But I never have. I think that I fancy myself as something more relevant. Like if I would do a stand-up comedy, I want to end with something like I talked about in the book there. And they use all the crayons when I give that speech. I talk about how I ask, is there anything troubling you? Do you have like a knee or something? Having trouble with the neighbors? And then I say, is there anybody here that woke up this morning and couldn't get out of bed because they just didn't want to go on one more day? And they raise their hands, and I talk about suicide. My grandfather was this more dark humor. My grandfather was living with my mother when he was like 97, and he saw a thing on TV about senior suicides. And he said, if it wasn't such a disgrace to the family, I'd cut my wrist. My mom said, I wouldn't be disgraced. And so he said, I took him to the hospital the day after he tried that. And he had a do not resuscitate senior living thing that meant they couldn't even bandage him up. They just put him together a little bit. But at the end of this terrible, terrible day, my mother said, I'm hungry. The body needs to respond the way it does. And she said, I'm hungry. Chris, go get some sushi. Now, my grandfather was a butcher in Du Bois, Pennsylvania for his whole life. Never had sushi. And so he's laying in the bed after trying to kill himself, 97 years old. And he said, what is that you're eating there? I said, it's sushi. He said, let me try a bite of that. Now, I don't know whether he was going to jump out of bed and say, thank God I'm alive. This sushi's fantastic. But it seemed like an electric moment. I said, what do you think? He said, I wouldn't hit a dog in the ass with this. So that's kind of thing, like I think if I put that in a stand-up comedy thing, I don't know whether it'd go or well or not. I probably should have tried that, but it just seems to wasn't for me. It's not too late. I could still do it now, but I thought I would do better with getting more corporate speaking engagements than I have. But maybe they'll be on the way now. Who knows? Thank you for your question.
Have you ever incorporated Parkinson's jokes into your routine or your books?
No, I haven't. Not for some standoffish reason, but just I don't have the jokes yet. I do tell people that one like about you should have seen me in the 8th grade that I looked great then, and I do the one about I'm still eligible for all those other things too, and so I can break it in there. And there's things floating around. I spent so much time putting this book together after the publisher didn't believe in it. There was dispute in my family about whether I should continue it. And people ask, how long does it take you to write a book? I said, I wrote the Palmer book in 6 weeks. The Art of Living Suddenly has taken 3 years. That's a lot of time staring out a window. But I'm not done yet. I think I'll find some way to get the word out there about it.
Thanks. And Christine was mentioning that we need a good Parkinson song and thinks you'd write great lyrics. And I agree with that. So if you're looking for one way to get the word out, there could be a Parkinson song.
Well, that's a great idea. I'll have to think about that. I've got friends in Nashville that I want to work with on songs now. They've experienced some great success recently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I like this. This one I'm talking about. I sat in a meeting years ago, and I was bored, and I was writing out country song titles. The greatest country song title ever is "I'm going to drink till I see double, then I'm taking one of you home." And I thought of one. The pitcher couldn't catch her, a baseball one, and so. I'm thinking about that. It starts out, they met at a ball. It was foul. She dug in, he dug out. So I'm toying around with writing country lyrics for a friend of mine. But I'll take that under advisement.
Well, please keep us updated.
Yeah.
Sounds like a full circle there with your time living in Nashville.
Yeah.
How has Parkinson's impacted your writing, or has it?
I can't type very well with the left hand. Sometimes it just gives up, but I say this was the first book I wrote. I could have written with one hand tied behind my back because the left hand was so useless. It shakes and I can't type very well, but sometimes I go on a tear and can type really well. but it hasn't affected it right now, I would say. I've gotten all my leg work done throughout my life. If I want to write a story about somebody who, is a Guinness Book World Record holder or something like that, I don't have to go anymore. I have the memories of all the things I've done in my life, so I can access them for now. I hope it doesn't get worse, but I still am convinced they're going to find a cure for it. I think that there's money out there. There's a lot of good vibes, and people are hoping for it. There's a lot of people that know people that have Parkinson's or have it themselves. Those people are working very hard to fix it. I don't like AI and a lot of what it represents, but it might help me in Parkinson's. And I tell people, I say, someday they're going to find a cure for Parkinson's, and on that day, you're going to wish you had it, because it's going to be a fun day, a lot of celebrating.
And what do you do to take care of yourself,
especially
with Parkinson's? Okay.
Well, going to my office is exercise. That's like 93 steps from the ground to the third floor. And that's a chore. But I go to Planet Fitness about 4 days a week. And I say I'm there for an hour, but I'm only actually exercising for about 20 minutes. So I can't say I've watched my diet any better, because I'm getting a sweet tooth now, and I enjoy the pastries and things like that. But I miss walking the way I used to. I used to go for long walks around the neighborhood, and I'd be thinking the whole time. And now I can't really go for walks like that because my foot's sore because of the operation. And I say we're all a house of cards. Once you start pulling the cards out from the bottom, the thing begins to teeter. So I've got the bad foot and the bad back and Parkinson's. So it's amazing I even get out of a chair anymore. Sometimes when I'm stuck in the chair, I told the girls to get Olympic ratings cards. Hold up, 6.2, 8.9, 7.3, if I can make it out of the chair.
It seems like you always have a positive spin on things. Is that something that you've developed over your lifetime, or was that something you were born with?
I think it's come about. There's a guy, A.J. Jacobs. He's written 6-word biographies. And he said his 6-word biography is born bald, grew hair, bald again. Describes his whole life like that. I thought mine was born innocent, grew daily more bewildered throughout. Because I look at the world and I think, why aren't you having fun? Why are you going to war? Why do you hate these people? And that just bewilders me. And I just think that I got that attitude that party on. I guess you'd say that. But when I see people struggling, and it makes me sad. I just want to have the most fun we can have, and I've done my best to spread that gospel.
Well, thank you for doing that. And it sounds like you don't take life too seriously.
It's amazing to me that we exist. That the possibilities of the odds of us being around here on this planet is just amazing. And you just wonder how we're going to screw it up.
Thank you, Chris. And I wanted to see if there's any additional questions. You can type them in the chat or just unmute yourself.
I have a question. If the invisible man eats a visible hoagie, how long will it be into the digestive system before it disappears?
Anyone want to provide that?
I think because you're going to see the hoagie floating in air, and then you'll take a bite. It'll still be in his mouth, then you'll see it because you can see through him. So when does the hoagie disappear? Somewhere in the digestive tract.
Yes.
The brain of a free-range chicken and the heart of a pound puppy.
Well, thanks for your big heart and your free loving spirit.
Thanks.
And certainly I'm looking forward to reading your latest book.
Yeah.
Check out Chris's website if you're interested in learning more about him. I know he'll even sign a copy.
I say I've written 11 books and 4 of them are so bad I don't even acknowledge they exist. So do you know how bad it is for an author to not to acknowledge his books exist? So it's like having a kid so ugly and stupid you won't put his picture up on the mantle.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, but they were like joke books that got out of control or golf books. These books here, the last 7 have been pretty good. I'm very, very proud of them. I was thinking today, if my father was alive, he'd be very proud of me.
I bet he is.
Yeah.
Any last questions or comments? Thank you so much. Oh, you put a smile on our faces. We appreciate your optimism.
Thank you.
Yes. I love your lighthearted ways, and thank you for dedicating your time to us. Thank you for spreading the word about Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And we hope to see you again soon.
I hope so. I enjoyed doing this with you and all the questions and all the good back and forth. So thank you. Thanks
You're
for paying
welcome.
attention, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for attending, everyone, and stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you all again soon. And thank you very much, storyteller, author from Latrobe, Chris Rodell. Until next time, bye everybody.